it feels like every time supporters settle in, thinking the season has finally steadied, Rangers find a way to shake the whole picture again. The mood around the club has been tense, not because the team has stopped competing, but because the league form has dipped at moments when consistency was needed most. That dip has pushed the staff to revisit ideas they shelved months ago, opening discussions that many thought were dead and buried after the summer window slammed shut. When performances wobble and injuries pile up, even the plans that once felt set in stone start to look a bit different. And that is exactly where Rangers find themselves. Behind the scenes, there has been a quiet shift as the club re-examines a name that nearly became part of the squad earlier this year. It was a move that looked almost certain to happen, then collapsed right at the end of the window, leaving supporters frustrated and the player heading in a different direction. Since then, circumstances have changed for both sides. The squad still lacks balance in a few areas, and the pressure to address the imbalance has grown. When the same questions keep popping up week after week, it becomes harder for anyone at the club to pretend the issues will fix themselves. The player in question has been making waves in Spain, settling into a demanding league with a calmness that has caught more attention than even his supporters predicted. His early performances have been steady, athletic, and composed, the type that get analysts talking and fans wondering whether he slipped through the club's fingers too easily. That rise has naturally sparked new whispers about a possible return to the conversation for Rangers, especially with the current manager shaping the team in a very distinct direction. When a coach sees a clear vision for how he wants his side to play, every piece of recruitment becomes a building block, and missing out on a player who fits that profile can feel like a setback. But even with the renewed noise, Rangers are not expected to dive back in when the January window opens. The decision has far less to do with talent and far more to do with timing, budget, and the fact that the club already addressed part of that defensive area in the summer, bringing in a left-sided defender with experience, athleticism, and confidence, reduced the urgency to bring in another player with a similar profile. The coaching staff have been pleased with the loan signing, mindful of the option to buy, and aware that doubling up in that area would eat resources needed elsewhere. It also matters that the player once linked to Rangers is naturally more of a centre-half than a fullback. Yes, he has the versatility to step wider when needed, but his strongest qualities shine at the heart of the defense. The left-back role, however, remains one of the positions that the manager is eager to upgrade. The team lacks that consistent, modern fullback who can provide balance, drive, and defensive solidity all at once. When that is already high on the priority list, it becomes harder to justify investing heavily in a player whose best work comes in a different area of the pitch. This is where the January window becomes tricky for Rangers. They have a clear list of needs, starting with left back, followed by options in midfield and reinforcements in attack. The manager has been very open in his assessment of the squad, praising the effort but highlighting repeatedly that the group needs strengthening if it is going to reflect the standards he sets. When a coach comes in with that level of clarity, recruitment becomes less about optional extras and more about essential upgrades. The players who come in have to move the team forward immediately, not just provide long-term potential. The difficulty is that the financial landscape is tighter than many supporters might wish. The club spent heavily in the summer, a significant investment intended to accelerate progress and close the gap in the league. That spending has consequences, and those Consequences are being felt now. There is only so much room left to maneuver, and every decision has to be measured. This is not the moment for gambles or emotional reunions. It is the moment for precision. Rangers cannot stretch the budget for players who are not absolute priorities, no matter how highly rated they may be. That reality does not close the door completely on the player linked earlier in the year. The situation may be revisited in the summer, depending on how his parent club view his future and how Rangers' own finances look at the end of the season. Football is full of moves that happen months later than expected once circumstances finally align. For now, though, January looks unlikely. The focus is elsewhere, and the club knows it must spend carefully rather than react impulsively to performances happening abroad. At the same time, there is another storyline bubbling away in the midfield where one of Rangers' most valuable assets continues to attract attention from across Europe. Interest has followed the player for months, and at one stage it appeared he might push for a move after falling out of favor earlier in the campaign. That tension created an opening that several clubs were ready to exploit, monitoring the situation closely in case Rangers signaled any willingness to negotiate. But football can change quickly. A new manager arrived, offered a clean slate, and the midfielder seized the chance. His performances improved, his confidence returned, and he forced his way back into the starting 11. Once that happened, the tone inside the club shifted dramatically. Losing him in the middle of the season became almost unthinkable. No matter how talented a squad is, certain players bring a balance that is hard to replace without major disruption, and this midfielder is one of those players. Rangers know exactly what he brings, and they also know that selling him in January would send entirely the wrong message at a time when the team is rebuilding momentum. The message coming from within the club is straightforward. He is not available unless a truly enormous offer arrives, the kind of figure that would make even European giants hesitate. That stance has cooled interest for now, with potential bidders aware that they will not be able to negotiate a bargain mid-season. It also helps that the player himself seems far more settled, focused on the football rather than the noise surrounding his future. Even with that stability, Rangers know the story is not finished. His contract is ticking down, and the conversation will eventually shift from whether the club should sell to whether they can afford not to. If no new deal is agreed, the summer will bring difficult conversations, especially if his form continues to attract attention. But January, for now, is off the table. The club cannot afford to lose someone central to the structure of the team when the margins in the league are razor thin. What adds another layer to all of this is the way the squad has responded to the changes brought in over the last few months. The players looked uncertain earlier in the season, drifting through matches without that sharpness supporters expect from anyone wearing a Rangers shirt. But as soon as the new manager settled in, there was a clear shift in intensity. Training sessions became more structured, the game model tightened up, and several players who had faded into the background suddenly found themselves energized again. That new energy has been crucial in turning things around, even if the league form has not yet reached the consistency the team needs. Still, everyone around the club understands that momentum alone cannot fix the gaps that have been exposed repeatedly. Rangers have looked vulnerable in wide areas, particularly on the left side, where the rotation of options has never truly produced a dominant solution. Fullback is a position that carries a lot of responsibility in the modern game, and the team simply has not had someone who can offer that constant presence, both defensively and going forward. Adam, It is not about pointing fingers at individuals. It is about recognizing that the system demands a certain profile of player, and until that profile is filled, the team will continue to feel unbalanced in certain phases of play. The midfield improvements have helped, but even there, the depth is being stretched thin. When the season began, many supporters expected the central areas to be the strength of the team, but injuries, dips in form, and tactical shifts have changed that picture. The resurgence of Raskin has steadied things, yet the club knows another midfielder with physicality and composure is needed to support the demanding style the manager prefers. Playing with high pressure and quick transitions puts an enormous load on the middle of the pitch, and Rangers have learned the hard way that relying on a small rotation of players simply will not last across a full season. Up front, the situation is even more delicate. Supporters have been vocal about needing a striker who can bring more than work rate and link-up play. The team has created chances in several league matches, but lacked that ruthless figure who turns half openings into goals. A clinical forward makes an entire team look better, lifting confidence and relieving pressure at key moments. The recruitment team is fully aware of this, but identifying the right player for a price the club can manage is far more complicated than fans sometimes imagine. Rangers cannot afford a signing who needs months to adapt or one who cannot handle the intensity of the league. Every incoming player must be ready from the first whistle. That is the core challenge facing the club ahead of the January window. The fans want ambition, the team needs reinforcements, and the manager has a clear plan. But the financial picture demands caution, and caution often looks like hesitation from the outside. The truth is that Rangers are working within limits that force them to think long-term rather than chasing short-term solutions that could create bigger problems later. It is a difficult balance, especially when rivals add quality and supporters expect immediate answers to every setback. For all the restrictions, there is still belief that the squad can be sharpened enough to push forward in the second half of the season. The manager has built trust quickly with the players, and that trust is visible on the pitch in the way the team presses, covers space, and reacts to adversity. There is a level of commitment now that had been missing earlier, and that shift gives the club confidence that targeted signings could elevate the group significantly, even with finances tight. The right move in one or two positions could transform the team's rhythm. What complicates everything further is the ongoing conversation around contracts. Several players are approaching stages in their deals where decisions must be made, and each one of those choices affects the wider rebuild. Keeping the core intact is important, but so is ensuring that no one runs down their deal to the point where the club loses value. It is a situation that requires both patience and firmness, and the hierarchy are trying to avoid the mistakes of past seasons where players were allowed to enter the final stretch of their contracts without clarity. The pressure that comes with all these decisions is something supporters often underestimate. Rangers is a club where expectations never drop and where every transfer, every substitution, and every performance is analyzed with extraordinary detail. That scrutiny can make the smallest uncertainty feel like a crisis. Yet, inside the club, there is a sense that the project is moving in the right direction, even if the results have not always reflected the progress. The football has become more proactive. The dressing room atmosphere has stabilized, and several young players have begun to show signs that they can contribute more consistently. Still, everyone knows that talk means nothing without results. The league remains unforgiving, and there is no room for prolonged slumps. That is why the upcoming window carries so much weight. The team cannot afford to fall short in areas that can be strengthened with the right investment. The defender they nearly signed in the summer may still be admired, but the focus has shifted to areas where the need is immediate. There will be opportunities to revisit that interest later, but for now, the club is steering its attention toward the pieces that will impact the team where it matters most. There is also the matter of keeping players motivated when transfer speculation swirls around them. Raskin is the perfect example of how quickly a situation can turn. Now, only a few months ago, some supporters believed he was destined to leave after a breakdown in communication and a visible dip in form. Now he looks revitalized, trusted again, and integral to the system. Managing those dynamics requires strong leadership and clear messaging, which the new coaching staff have delivered. However, maintaining that stability while interest grows from outside clubs is part of the ongoing challenge Rangers must navigate as they push forward. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to get all the exclusive news about Rangers FC. Don't overlook any details about your beloved team. It's crucial for Rangers FC fans. The word drifting through Govan this morning, Bear set the hide spinning, a low rumble turning into a full-blown clatter across the city. Nicholas Raskin, the midfield spark, who's been a fixture in the Rangers engine room, is said to be packing his bags. Nothing carved in stone, nothing officially stamped, but the kind of whisper that takes on its own life once it hits the streets. Folk around Ibrox say the direction of the club has already given the nod behind closed doors, leaving the dressing room stunned, barely believing what's being passed around. It's the sort of news that makes players stop mid-stride in the corridor and glance at each other, wondering who heard what first. Some are said to be shaken, others quietly raging or trying to keep faces straight as the rumor mills grind. Raskin's influence on the pitch has never really been in question. His bite in the tackle and sharpness in transition gave the side a rhythm few could replicate. Losing a player with that blend of grit and imagination wouldn't simply be a gap, it'd be a crater. Insiders claim the talks have been simmering for a while, though many inside the club brushed it off as routine noise, the kind that swirls around any player who draws attention. But this time, the murmur has a different weight, like something heavy dropped onto the table during a private meeting. The hierarchy, by all accounts, have braced themselves for the backlash, fully aware the support won't take kindly to seeing another key figure drift toward the exit. What's left now is the uneasy quiet that comes before a storm. In pubs from Partick to Paisley, the chat is already full of theories, some wild, some worryingly plausible. Supporters are asking if there's more going on behind the scenes than anyone's letting on, and whether the squad can hold its shape if one of its most combative voices slips away. For now, nothing's confirmed to the public, and maybe the whole thing fizzles out like so many rumors before it. But the mood around Ibrox tells a different story, something stirring, something big enough to silence the usual bravado. If Raskin truly is on his way out, the tremor won't stop at the dressing room door. It'll ripple through every seat in the stadium. Greetings, fans. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, as it's greatly appreciated by Rangers FC. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments section below. Until the next video, stay tuned,